Greetings. At this moment, we're going to talk about doing evaluation for the social work practice setting. So this is all about being a practitioner, being a therapist, or being a counselor, and evaluating the effectiveness of your case. This is called client-centered evaluation. We also know of it as single system design, or SSD. So let's talk about what it takes to do single system design. Here's what you want to know. What is the effectiveness of your practice with one single client? So you may have one person who's a client. You may have one family or group, or you may have one community. So it's not necessarily the number of people. You could have thousands of people in that community, but if you define it as one community, it would be appropriate for a single system design. So the research design that we're talking about here is called an A-B design, the one that we're going to talk about. There are other designs that get more complex, ABB, B design, ABC, ABCD. There's a lot of variations on this, but there's one central point that needs to be made, which is that all of those designs represent the passage of time. A proceeds before B proceeds before C. So the single subject design is very much about the passage of time, which is really how it's differed from other types of traditional research. So the A phase can be several things. It can be a baseline. Even before you meet the client, it can be baseline information collected out of a case file. It could be the first half of treatment or intervention. Or it could be an intervention that's done before a second intervention is attempted. So the statistic that we're going to use is the independent samples t-test. This is used a little bit differently than we've used it before in classic research. But the purpose is to compare the mean or average during your A phase of the intervention with the mean of B phase for your intervention. So you've got to have two variables. The first is your continuous variable. It's the outcome of your intervention, what it is that you want to do with the client that you're measuring. Then the other variable is a two-level grouping variable. And SPSS uses the wording of grouping variable. So the groups represent the A and B phases. Those are the two groups. So open up SPSS and you're going to have to create two variables. Again, the first variable you're going to create is the outcome measure, what it is that you're measuring, and a two-level categorical variable that will tell you which observation points are in the A phase and which observation points are in the B phase. And for SPSS, we will code that as A equals 1 and B equals 2. Computer doesn't understand letters, so that's why we're doing that. So this is our classic question for a single system design. What is the effectiveness of my social work practice with the single one identified client? When you answer that question in a client-centered evaluation or single system design, you have three things to do. First is discuss your statistical finding, and we recommend that you relax your alpha standard to 0.10, or you could use 0.05 if you want. But discuss the statistical finding from your independent samples t-test. So interpret that. Second, provide your findings from the acceleration line. So put in the line chart that is your acceleration line and put in the dividing line between the A and B phases. And the most important of all of this is that you discuss in detail the social work practice implications for your client. This is all about improving practice with your client. So let's now look at an example. I'm going to open up SPSS. It'll come open in a second. We have a case where we have Jim Bob, which is he's a worker at Mesilla Valley. He's treating a patient named Scooter Hardy. For a very common thing that we do in treatment. Let me go ahead and open up that particular Word file. Yeah, he's treating for loneliness and isolation. And during the course of treatment, Scooter's been given some homework to do. He's going to practice a skill to reduce loneliness. And he's going to actually just say hi to strangers, to people that he doesn't know. So it's about him improving his conversation skills. So for the measurement for a single system design analysis, he will count the number of self-initiated contacts that he makes in a week with a person not previously known to him. So Jim Bob, the counselor, wants to know, what's the effect? Is this getting better or is this getting worse with the client? One of the first decisions that you have to make when you do this is to decide where's the A phase and where's the B phase. If you look below, you'll see week identified goes through 10 weeks. So there's the passage of time, and then directly beneath it, you can see the number of contacts. Notice here in the first week he made 4 contacts, and actually by the 8th week he's actually made 12 contacts in a week. So just by roughly looking at the data, we can see it's working. Notice that in this case there was no other reason. There's only one intervention provided. It's provided equally throughout the entire 10 weeks. Nothing catastrophic happened in the neighborhood. No big fires or hurricanes or anything, bombs went off that would cause some environmental disturbance. So with that, what we're going to do is divide this at a 50-50. It'll be the first half of treatment and the second half of treatment. So what I want to do is just draw in a line, and I'm going to put that between halfway, 10 observation points, and I'm going to put that right between week 5 and week 6. So that's my first 5 observations and in the A phase, my second 5 observations in the B phase. So we're now ready to enter that data. So let's open our SPSS, and we're going to go to, at the bottom, we should be in the variable view. That's the first thing we're going to do. You need to create 2 variables. It doesn't matter which order you create them in. I'm going to call my first variable group, and I'll have 0 decimal places, and this will be phase of the intervention. And I have 2 values. The first is for my A phase, but the computer doesn't understand the letter A, so I'm going to put in 1 and call this the first half of treatment of the intervention. Let me use that word. I'll add that. The next value is 2, which is the second half of intervention. Okay, now you can see 1 is our A phase and 2 is our B phase, the second half of treatment. So I'll click on OK. This is measured, of course, at a nominal level. My second variable here would be contacts, and we're going to put number of self-initiated contacts. And I have no particular value. I'm going to treat this as a scale variable, which is required for our t-test, of course. So I've got my 2 variables defined. Now I'm going to go into my data view. I'm going to enter that. I know I have 5 observations in A and 5 in B. I can fill that in really pretty quick. Okay, so there's my second half of treatment. There's my first half of treatment. Contacts, I'm just going to read off of the sheet. Should be 4, 5, 7, 4, 6, checking to make sure I'm at the halfway point, 6, 8, 12, 6, and 7. Make sure as you enter the last number that you do hit the return or enter key so that that last number registers. So now our SPSS data file is complete. Might be a good time to save that file also. Okay, let's go through and do the analysis. Our first step is to run the independent samples t-test. We go to Analyze, Compare Means, Independent Samples t-test. Grouping variable, that's our two-level categorical. You can see there are 2 question marks. I'll define my group as 1, which is the A phase, and 2 as the B phase. Continue. The test variable is always my continuous variable. It's the number of contacts. So my OK button is highlighted. I'm ready to look and analyze and see what's there. Let's see what we have. This would be a good way to report this now. During the first half of intervention, we have 5 observation points with a mean of 5.2 contacts per week. During the second half of the intervention, we also have 5 contacts with a mean of 7.8 contacts, self-initiated contacts. This is a difference between the first and second phase of treatment, where the client does 2.6 more contacts. So you can see mathematically that he is improving over time. Now, we had talked about previously of setting the alpha level to 0.10. This means you have a 10% probability of being wrong. Most social science uses 0.05. For a single system design, in this particular case, we stated it earlier, we're going to use 0.10. Our exact statistical significance level is 0.084, meaning that with alpha equals to 0.10, we do have statistical significance and that the intervention was effective in increasing the number of self-initiated contacts made throughout the course of treatment. So that's our independent samples t-test, but we're not done. Our next step now is to present this information in a graphic form. We're going to go up to Graphs, Legacy Dialogues, and we want to build a line chart. And we need a simple one that's already identified. We'll use values of individual cases. And our line always represents our continuous variable. So that's all we have to do, is move our continuous variable over to where it says line represents. And click on OK. And you can see that my JavaScript is not working, so that's a particular problem. I'm not going to be able to show you that at this time. I'll have to figure out how to do that later. So what I'll do is make that a separate iTunes video for you. So the third point is to make sure that you talk about social work implications. Again, from the independent samples t-test, we know that it's working. For example, so we would probably want to continue that for sure. We need to look at our means and say, is 7.8 a good target? Or do we want to encourage the client to do even more, maybe say 10 self-initiated contacts per week? But again, we can see our therapist here, Jim Bob's doing a good job so far. And that'd be a good thing to continue. So what I'll do next is go ahead and set this up so that we can do the line chart. And that concludes part A.